When we return to our planet, the High Court may well sentence you to torture.
He likes movies, we like movies. Septum Sin versus the world. Septum Sin versus the world. Septum Sin versus the world. Septum Sin versus the world.
I'd buy that for $1.
Greetings! You're watching Septum Sin vs. the World. I'm Septum Sin, and today we are going to have a cat that really wants my attention. And we're going to be continuing with our show, Video Game Diaries. I hope you enjoyed our first foray into stuff that I have piddled around with but have yet to beat a single thing in. But now we're going to go into things that I have. The format for this is going to be pretty standard. I'm going to talk a little bit about the system, what it's about, what it means to me, and then, dodging this cat, what games I have beaten for this, what I think about them, and with nostalgia intact, what I think. Do I think this is something that I would like to revisit, that should be reoccurring while I play fetch with the cat? He's going to bring the string up, I'm going to throw the string, and he's going to chase it. Alright, well, so the one we're going to start with, we talked a little bit about my first console experiences being with the Atari 2600 and the Commodore 64, yet not having a single game beaten on either of those systems. The same going for the Sega Master System. But I remember back in the days when Kmart had their Blue Light Special. See, now what they did, Kmart, for those of you who don't know, is what Walmart was before there was a Walmart. It was your department store. It had all your basic stuff. It had some snacky foods, clothes, electronics, tools, all the things you could use. That was the previous incarnation before Walmart kind of did it better. Cattail. Any case, the Blue Light Special was all about a light. You know, like those blue lights that the police have, little strobe things? They had like a stand that they put in places where they would have these big sales, and they call it the Blue Light Special because they turn the light on and you'd be able to see it and you just zoom in on that. Well, they were having a Blue Light Special on the Nintendo. I had never seen such awesomeness out of a game system. The graphics were amazing. I mean, I'll admit, you know, look at what I was playing with. A Commodore 64 and a Atari. These are not exactly the best. And the Sega I really hadn't played around with until after that point. I saw Super Mario Brothers and I near flipped as a child. It was on sale, the Blue Light Special had it dropping. The Nintendo had a peculiar history, and it made a guarantee. That's how they managed to get it, beat that console crash with E.T., where they allowed retailers, they said, well, look, take our stock, whatever doesn't sell, you can send it back, no cost to you. We eat that cost. This, in my opinion, was a great move, and it helped sell a lot of games. So, let's get started with the games. I have beaten a total of 37 games on the NES. So, we've got a lot to cover. Let's get started. The first of them, I'm doing these in alphabetical order, in case you're wondering, is Castlevania 2. Simon's Quest. Castlevania, I admit, I was not a huge fan of the original Castlevania. I had played the original at a friend's house. But Castlevania 2 was an entirely different thing. The challenge was not as bad as the first one. If you were willing to grind so that you can get the best whips and best armor, because you use the hearts like money, and eventually you leveled up, you got more powerful, so you could actually grind your character like any other type of action RPG, and it was really the first thing, maybe a predecessor to Dark Souls in a lot of ways. So I loved it. There were mysteries. The mystery where you lean, I mean, Angry Video Game Nerd talks about it all the time, or how would you know that? I figured it out without Nintendo Power's help, thank you very much. And some stuff you just heard from rumor. I mean, that's what you did back then. There was no internet to go to. You learned from rumor. It was awesome. You could free roam, you could go to different towns, get different items. I was in love with this game. To this day, coming back to it, today's day and age, I really feel like it is a bit too vague for this current game crowd. So I would not recommend it for somebody who is just coming up. But for somebody looking for a classic, this game is actually fun. It is a fun return. Just keep that in mind. So next on my list is Contra. Yes, the Contra. And it introduced me to the Konami code. I remember reading in Nintendo Power, somebody beat it with just standard lives and with the Power Glove. That man was my hero. I tell you, that was the amazing thing. Do any of you in the comments remember this in Nintendo Power? That was our Bible back then for us Nintendo players. And Contra was just super cool. It was an action game. It was a shoot 'em up. You were taking it to task, taking those alien soldiers to task, kicking their butts, beating them down, and taking no prisoners. You typed in the Konami code, you got the bunch of lives, and you ran through that bad boy. Now, I tried it once, and I actually admit I was too much in a hurry, so the first time I wasn't able to beat it. But after the second time, I was able to get back and remember my roots. Because you still needed some skill, even with the Konami code, because you could die very easily. You died in one hit. Getting some of the different weapon upgrades, like the spread shot, it just was very fun. For those of you who are looking for a challenge, looking for a good run-and-gun type game, don't forget Contra. That one is one I believe still holds up. I think in this day and age with all the retro, the graphics aren't going to be a big deal regardless. It's the gameplay that's going to be what holds it up. And Contra's holds that bar quite high. So the next one is definitely a favorite of mine, and that is Crystallis. For those of you who are not familiar with Crystallis, it's on the SNK collection, by the way, if you want to get it. So it is available on modern systems. It was an action RPG. It had a lot of similarities to Zelda, but not. You're playing this guy in the future who was frozen and woke up, and now you're tasked to actually save the world. And that is quite a task for somebody who's running around ultra fast with a little sword just like... What I thought was fun was the fact that they didn't just have magic in it that you could use. You could use regular magic spells, but you could also charge up your sword and shoot bolts out of the sword with varying degrees. And as you powered up your blades, you could use different different spells, different ways to take it out. I really loved it when you charged up the flame sword for the first time, and you had this torrent of fire that you could just through. The swamp that was giving me so much trouble, I was able to take that flame blade and just whack it. I will say that there is a bit of a challenge curve, but for those people who are used to having a challenge with games, used to that precision, the controls can be a little bit jerky at times, but once you get the hang of it, It's actually a really fun game, great to revisit. I liked it all the way to the end. And I have played it again, and I have beaten it again, though I doubt I'm going to be beating the SNK collection anytime soon. So, next on my list, for those of you who are Tactics fans, is an old Tactics game called Desert Commander. Now, Desert Commander was, again, it's really the predecessor to Tactics Advanced. Those Tactics games that they had on the Game Boy Advance with the military tanks and stuff like that. It worked identical to that. You had your icons that represented your units, and you went against another person's army. There were different things on the board that you went to, like refill stations and stuff like that, and you watched what your troop levels were versus theirs, and you could use your strong units, like anti-aircraft versus aircraft, bombers versus certain targets. You could move your infantry with the special car. It really was a fun tactical game. Now, to me, it's a bit slow as compared to the other tactics style games. You have to wait a lot. You have to be very, very patient. You have to move every unit. You can't just end your turn. You've got to actually move every unit forward before you can go to the enemy's turn. So it can be a little bit tedious to this day and age. But if you really want to see a classic, something that predates a lot of the games that are all over the place today, this is the one. This is one of the ones that I point to as some of the early predecessors. So now we get to some beat-em-ups. Oh yeah, two amazing beat-em-ups. Double Dragon and Double Dragon 2: The Revenge. Double Dragon was a hard game. It was almost an action RPG because you had to level up your character through beating up people, and as you leveled them up, you gained more light, more ability. So as you gained more power, you gained more moves, like the headbutt, like the throw, like the uppercut, or even the roundhouse kick to do more damage to your enemies. It was not the arcade game, so if you had played the arcade game like I had, you had some disappointment, but you were able to take the action home with you. And that was just amazing. That was an amazing, wonderful thing. I was impressed myself by the fact that I've actually beaten this game. And I won't surprise you've watched the Video Game Nerd review of this. But the real star of this series, in my opinion, was Double Dragon 2. You could, for the first time, take your buddy with you, not worry about friendly fire, go in, do some smackdown. The game was amazingly responsive, and it was not overly hard. It did not have that major difficulty spike that the third game had. I beat it pretty well. I beat it multiple times with friends, by myself. It was a great experience, had some creative villains. It was something, and I went back and I tried it again not too long ago, and it still holds up to this day. Now another one that has, well, this one has dragon in the title, is Dragon Warrior. Now Dragon Warrior was the original Dragon Quest, which is huge in Japan. It is probably Final Fantasy's biggest rival here, and it's not quite as popular in the United States. I played this one after I'd played Final Fantasy. It's a little bit of a graphical downgrade, and it is much harder because you only have one person in your party. That's it. Nobody else in your party. You're on your own on this quest. You got to save the princess and take out the Dragon Lord. Find the items, and you got to search that map for these items. Or you had to find a friend or a guide because they were very well hidden. That's how it was in the early RPGs. That was how they stretched out the time, is they made you search for these secrets. It was a fun game. I actually have replayed it and beaten it. I remember getting to the last boss, but I don't remember beating the last boss in the early days. So I did finally go back in, beat the last boss, and now I can safely say I have definitely beaten the game. Would I recommend it? Yeah, I'd recommend it. It is a fun old-school RPG. It doesn't take a lot of hours to beat, and there are plenty of newer iterations that can be utilized to help you do what you need to do. Alright, so what's next? Dragon Warrior 3. Yeah, I skipped 2. I'm still trying to beat 2. It's just really hard to beat. It's a lot longer, it has story, but it's really hard for me to beat. But 3 was awesome. You could pick your party makeup. You had a full-on party, you had your hero, and you could pick your party out of a different class set, much like Final Fantasy 1. So you could dumb yourself down with a bunch of jesters, or you could get a soldier, wizards, clerics, whatever you wanted in your group. So you could have your specialists. It was great. And further down the line, you could do some job changes through the Sage, and it just turned it on its head. I love this game. I have beaten it at least once, almost twice, but I got to the end and it erased my game, and I was like, nope. But I do plan on trying to beat it again. I'm going through a Dragon Warrior or Dragon Quest playthrough now, so I can try and play all of them, so when I get to 11 I can have beaten all of them, except for 10, because those people never ported here. I don't know why. But yes, out of all the Dragon Quest games that I have actually beaten, this is the one to play. This is the one to go back to. It does hold up, and it is a great game. Alright, one that they had a remaster for later on, and will make an appearance at the PS3, is DuckTales. I know. DuckTales? But no, I mean, it really is a fun game. It's much more challenging in the NES incarnation, and surprisingly, it is very fun. You're playing Scrooge McDuck, you're gathering treasure from around the world. Back when I was growing up, there was something called the Disney Afternoon, which would come on, I believe, Fox, and you would have the main ones where, of course, you'd have DuckTales, you'd have Rescue Rangers, you'd have Darkwing Duck, you'd have a couple others like Gummy Bears, Tailspin, Gargoyles, things like that. But those were the top 3, and it really was fun. I enjoyed every moment of it when I was growing up as a child. And to play this was like playing the game. I mean, playing the game. Like living it. I loved it. You could run into all the famous characters. It just was fun. It really was fun. So, let's talk about, well, Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy was what got me into RPGs. When I first got it, I admit, I was an ADHD, very hyper child. I didn't know what I was going through. I didn't even bother to read the menus. I was thinking, mash the buttons, they'll attack. I'm not reading the menus. But eventually I learned, wait, read the menus. It'll tell them what to do. I was so intrigued by this adventure that just drew me in. And I remember the moment I beat it. It was an epic battle at the end with chaos. I lost 2 of my party members. I was over at a friend's house, and we were fighting it. Both of them were dying. I had just the fighter and the black wizard left, and the black wizard kept casting fast on the fighter. Chaos wasn't doing much after that first barrage. He did like this atomic thing, and it just wiped out almost everybody but those 2. But then he didn't bother to do anything else, and eventually we were victorious. It was a moment to behold. That's why I would say Final Fantasy is a game to go back to. It does hold up, and it does keep well. So we're talking about games that don't hold up. one that I played the heck out of was Goonies 2. This was really fun. I really loved the movies, movie. I remember playing the original Goonies in the arcade. We had a bowling alley in our town. I grew up in a really small town, and they had a small arcade, and they had the original Goonies there, and I thought it was really cool. So when I saw Goonies 2 come out, I had to get it. I always wondered where Goonies 1 was when it came to the Nintendo. And it's like an action exploration game. You go through all of these different areas, picking up treasures, and trying to beat the game while outwitting the bad guys from the movie. It has the same issues that come with something like Castlevania 2, where you really need to understand the game's secrets in order to really enjoy it. The controls are clunky, it's a bit slow, it was hard to come back to. But it's worth checking out, but definitely not one that has held up very well over the years. Another one that I will not be able to play because I need special equipment for it and a special TV is Gumshoe. Gumshoe used the light gun. And the light gun was an accessory that allowed you to take a gun and shoot it at the TV, and you could hit your target. Like you do shoot 'em ups, duck hunt, which that's the famous dog. That's where you would get those things from. Gumshoe was this game about Gumshoe, and you shot him to have him jump higher. So you had to keep him through all of these obstacles while collecting items. It really was a cool game. I can't tell you how it holds up because I can't play it. There are peripherals you can buy that allow you to play some of these old games again and utilize a version of the Zapper with your current TV. So it is playable, but I'm not willing to spend that much money for a game that was incredibly hard and one that I'm not sure I'm even going to like again. So I stick to just watching YouTube playthroughs again. So the last one I'm going to cover, because I'm going to split this in two just because I have 37 games on this list. And that is Gyromite. One of the first ones I played it at a relative's house because I couldn't really afford the Rob the Robot accessory because it was very expensive. It was a system seller at the time, and this was one of like 2 games that it worked with. So I had a friend with me, and we would play it together because you could have one friend controlling the scientist and one controlling the little columns that went up and down. Now, you were a scientist that was trying to go in and save your lab. You had to deal with these monsters. You had to deal with the different pistons that came up and down, and you used the second controller, or you could have the robot use the second controller to help you out. I can't rate it based on the robot. I heard it's really slow. I can't really say it, for current times. But I was excited by this game at the time. Playing it again, I feel like I need to just get somebody to play it with me. I think that's the only way I'm going to be able to enjoy it. Still, it was a fun concept at the time, and it helped bring the Nintendo out, and that makes this a great system. So that's all I've got for this week's Video Game Diaries episode. Hopefully next week, or maybe a week after that, I don't know, but when I get to the next one, I'm going to complete the Nintendo list, starting with I and going all the way to Z. For those of you who actually are paying attention, you probably know at least one Z game that you've beaten on the Nintendo. Let me know in the comments, were there any Nintendo games that you played and you enjoyed as a child? Well, this has been Septum Sin, and I'm going to see you on the next one. Goodbye.
Goodbye.